Yeah. I'll be flexing on you CGS 김치 쏘대 버린 Why you 알아두 널 나는 널 모르는 척해 I'll get the hell out money then I'm counting 행사 money 덕분에 내 나이가 내가 할 수 없는 거래
Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 37 of On the Flank. I'm one of your hosts, John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick. Say hello, Joe.
Hey everybody.
And Joe, I think this team deserves us to talk about them first. The San Francisco Shock have completed it. A perfect stage, a 28-0 map record. Absolutely dominating this stage, looking like the best team in the league. They beat the Fusion this week 4-0 to start us off on Thursday, and then they finished off on Sunday 4-0ing the Shanghai Dragons in a nice little close match. But I think they deserve our congratulations first, Joe, because that's pretty crazy, right? A perfect stage.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say that this was their hardest week too. They haven't had an incredibly difficult stage two. They played Valiant, Guangzhou twice, Hangzhou, and Toronto before this week. But yeah, even pulling out the 4-0s against Shanghai and Philly in week 5. Yeah, just looking really nice.
Obviously, this team is. They're looking, I think most people have them as favorites to win the stage playoffs now. They think they're better than Titans at this point. They've just been getting better and better and better every single week. But Joe, the question is now, is that actually a perfect stage? Because I think the most perfect stage you could have is if you don't let up a single point on any map. That'll never happen.
They probably, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably not.
maybe if a team just gets super stacked, they'll just have a absolutely perfect stage. Never let up a single point, and just.
I'm trying to think if there have been even any perfect games yet, like any scoreless series.
I think someone got very close to doing it to Houston this stage. Let me go back to, I think it was in week 2. Probably Vancouver. Maybe no, it wasn't Vancouver. But somebody, maybe it was week 3. But somebody, I know Houston just had a game where they just were not scoring any points at all. Maybe it was Philly. Let's see.
I seem to remember that.
Philly was close.
It was Shanghai, I want to say. Although I guess they drew a map, so maybe not.
Yeah. Philly.
Yeah, Shanghai was
3-2
Junkertown, and everything else was 0-0.
Yep. 0-0 Temple. 2-0. Wow. Yeah.
Draw with 0 points. You don't see that right.
Yeah, that was the match I was thinking about for sure. But yeah, that would be crazy if someone had a perfect game. Could that be the equivalent to a perfect game in baseball, Joe? Here in the Overwatch League.
I mean, we've seen perfect maps with no deaths.
Oh yeah, yep.
That's happened before.
Yes, we have. But yeah, perfect stage for San Francisco until somebody does what I just said, and then this is less impressive. But I don't think anyone's ever going to do that. That's crazy. That team would have to be stacked.
And then it happens next stage.
Okay. By San Francisco, they proved me right. They're like, okay, you didn't think that was a perfect stage, John? Come on, we'll do it.
You thought we were the best team?
Yeah.
No, we can get better.
That would be crazy. But yeah, this week there was nothing too much happened, and I think we alluded to that in the preview. Kind of, there were only a couple games that really mattered. The San Francisco thing was a fun thing. They didn't need to win these games 4-0, but obviously it's awesome that they did for themselves. And
nothing like a plus 28 map
yeah
differential for your season standings.
I mean, yeah, that's gonna be very helpful. Absolutely. But let's talk Shanghai's Shock before we move on to some other matches, because I do have that as my match to rewatch, despite Shock getting a 4-0. Not too often you see me saying you should rewatch a 4-0 game, But honestly, this was pretty close on specifically the last two maps, Kings Row and Rialto. It was very close. Shanghai was challenging them pretty hard, and they were looking good while doing it. Paris was just a blazing time set by the Shock. My God, everyone making jokes about blinking, and then it was over.
Was this the map that, like Shock's first attack, they set a record, and then Shanghai attacked and almost broke it, but didn't, and then Shock attacked again and broke their own record they just set?
Mm-hmm.
Was that this map?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
crazy.
That was this map. The Shock. They came out swinging, and Shanghai was hanging with them. They were hanging with the punches. They took a map on Oasis too. Like they were hanging with them the whole time. They were so close to just taking one map, and that's impressive. The Dragons probably the most formidable opponent for the Shock at this stage, which is crazy talk if you consider last year. But
Yeah.
this is I would definitely go back and rewatch this, because not only because it was pretty close, but because these two teams are going to be facing each other next week. So you'll get a little preview of that right there.
True. First thing I want to say, I don't know if that's true or not, but
I just had the schedule pulled up, but it's gone now. Yes, first match of the week.
nice.
Mm-hmm. But besides that, let's move forward to the Houston Outlaws, because they went 0-7, and I think everyone is. This is a different 0-7 than usual. Joe, would you agree?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Because we're used to Shanghai not winning, we're used to Florida not winning, we're used to Washington not, even though Washington hasn't had an 0-7 stage ever, but we're used to when other teams do that. I think there's higher expectations for the Outlaws, specifically from their fans. So that's the reason I'd say it's a little bit different. But Joe, go ahead with what you're gonna say.
yeah, I think I was just gonna point out, even how well they were playing against what turned out to be like sixth place Dallas at the Dallas homestand or anything like that. That yeah, it's definitely not like you said, not traditional. Even though they have the worst map differential in the league after stage 2, which you kind of hate to see.
Yeah, Houston. I mean, they looked so good in Dallas, against Dallas specifically, and it's disappointing that they went 0-7, because you definitely saw the potential of how good they can be if they're putting in the hard work. And they I think the difference is they had their own style in that match against Dallas. They were playing DPS heroes a lot of the time, and they were looking really good when they did, especially on Temple of Anubis and maps where they were able to run that DPS comp and look really good while doing it. They're just not good at goats, just straight up. They're awful at goats, and I think this 0-7 proves they're one of the worst teams in the league at goats. So they're just going to have to hope for a meta change. This was the same problem they had last year. Yeah. Like the whole, like they were great when Junkrat was good in the first stage meta, and then they could not adapt as time went on in the stage or in the season. I mean, they just could not adapt to a different meta. They're only good at one meta, and it's when Jake can play Junkrat and everyone's on their comfort heroes, apparently. So I think that's the biggest problem for the Houston Outlaws. And yeah, it's hard to come back in a season after going 0-7 in a stage. I guarantee it's going to be hard for them. But Joe, where do you think the most change is needed for the Outlaws? Is it specific players? Is it coaching? Where is it here?
I mean, it's hard to look at this roster and say that there's a bunch of player changes that need to be made. I mean, we were talking going into this season, how nice they looked. That bringing in Dante was like one of the one of the biggest, one of the only changes that they, or that, that we felt that they actually needed to make, um, to sort of cover their bases about where they need to be. But yeah, I don't. It's hard to say that this and uh, I had planned to use this phrase about a different topic that I'm sure we'll get to later in this show. But I'll use it now too. That I mean, it almost feels above my pay grade to try to diagnose the Houston here, because you're right. They're definitely not a bottom table team, or at least not along with Florida or Washington or this stage is Guangzhou maybe or Paris. But um, yeah, I don't know. They need definitely need something to do in the next 3 or 4 weeks for this big long All-Star break. Um, and yeah, try to do something differently. Try to think about things differently, even. Um, and yeah, come up with something new for this stage three. That again, we sort of mentioned last week, isn't looking to be super different from stage two.
Yeah, hopefully. Um, Hopefully we get some patch changes here soon. I'm sure there will be something at least, but yeah, Houston. I mean, the biggest problem for me is just coaching. I think they got talented players. I think it's coaching, which is unfortunate because I like their coaches. I like Tyrone. I like their GM Flame. They both got deep histories in Overwatch, but I don't know. I think they've been unable to teach their players how to play in this meta with these specific heroes. But the players are super talented. Linkser's amazing. Dante's obviously amazing. Muma is still one of the best main tank players in this league, despite being on an awful team. So, and they've got Cool Matt, who's a really good diva player. I mean, they've got some talented people. I think they're all more or less like kind of one tricks. I don't think Muma's a one trick, but I think Cool Matt he's mostly good at diva. I think Jake is like mostly really good at Junkrat. Like I think that's the issue they've got is their players just aren't that flexible either. But they're super talented on their heroes they're comfortable with, clearly, because when they are playing those heroes, they're looking really good. So it's they're kind of just in a weird situation right now, and I don't know. While I do like their players, maybe they do need to get rid of them because those players are only valuable in certain situations, and when they are valuable, the team's really good. But when they aren't valuable, the team's really bad. So that's just you want a flexible roster.
It's true.
Yeah, especially in esports because every game is constantly evolving. So yeah, it's especially. I mean, Overwatch has evolved. Overwatch is a completely different game from last season. Like it's crazy. But yeah, let's move on to our next team. I want to go over the Boston Uprising and their two games because their two games featured some prominent upsets. One of them,
both of them.
Yeah, both of them. One of them was them upsetting a team, and the other one was them getting upset by a team, which is the most Boston thing of all time, if you ask me, because this team has been at times great, amazing, looking like a top tier team, and at other times looking like they're not going to make playoffs. And that's what they looked like at the end of this week. At the beginning of this week, though, they upset the Los Angeles Gladiators, gave them their first loss since like stage 1, week like 2 or 3, I think 3 maybe, yeah 3, and made it so they didn't have a perfect stage. Gladiators are 6-1 now, only getting the 4 seed because of it. And Boston Uprising, they looked great, Joe. They looked really good against these two teams are two of my favorites to watch. So if anyone were to upset my Los Angeles Gladiators, I'm fine with the Boston Uprising doing it. But yeah, they look great. Why do you think this happened, Joe? where were both was it more LA was losing it, or was it more Boston was winning it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we've seen all the extremes that Boston has gone to this stage. Whether it was starting off with like three reverse sweeps in a row or whatever it was, or yeah, coming down here beating the Gladiators way above them in the standings, or losing a close one to Washington on Sunday. Yeah, I kind of wonder if, like some other teams we could mention, I think probably Philly fits in this category. Maybe Chengdu. Is it like that Boston also is a team that likes um, to play at the level of the team that they're
Yes,
facing.
very much.
Whether like Chengdu losing to Valiant really close this week. Same thing, or Philly. Um, to a certain extent. But yeah, that Boston can be really good and they have really big highs. But yeah, for whatever reason, they can also pull off stuff like that on Sunday. It's sort of inconsistent team, but also like you said, an enjoyable team to watch just because of the way uh, lots of their matches go down.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, because of it, every match is close. Much like you're saying with Philly, they're known as the Map Five Kings, and all this stuff. Like it's fun to watch because they do play down to every team, and every game looks so darn close, and that's fun. I mean, they managed to make a Washington Justice game fun by letting them beat them, basically. Um, but yeah, the Justice game. That one's obviously more recently in my head because it happened more recently. But I fell asleep in the middle of this. I was very tired yesterday. I fell asleep map 3 maybe, and then woke up for map 4, and I was like, what? What is happening? And I thought I was still dreaming. The Washington Justice were literally, when I woke up, about to force it to a map 5, and I was like, what are they doing wrong? And I didn't get to see much of Rialto, but I did see Busan in full, and I was like, oh, Boston's throwing. Um, they looked awful. I don't know what they were doing exactly, but there was one point I think that exemplified what the hell was happening to Boston perfectly, and that was like the very last fight of Busan, where um, Boston got picked off. Most of their team fights started off with them getting picked off before they could even start fighting, and then I think once they got picked off, they still had time. They could regroup and then go in for one last fight. But RCK decided that was not what they were going to do. Right when they got picked off, RCK EMP'd, got like one person, and then Boston lost the map. Um, they were just in a panic, I think. I have no clue what was happening. Um, but Joe, let's talk positives Washington Justice wise because they've got a bunch of new players, and I think two support players that they've picked up performed especially well. If you could name those players for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is their first series with Sleepy back in, or I think their first, well, yeah, their first win with Sleepy,
Yeah.
because it's their first win all stage. Um, Back in the roster, obviously picked up from San Francisco, so it was really cool to see him. Um, to have that success, kind of like what we were talking about. Some of these other additions um, that Washington has put in their roster, to have them and then to pick up a win is moral victory if nothing else. And then Arc, obviously, relatively new addition. What, he came in like earlier this stage, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very beginning of the stage. I feel like, yeah,
But yeah, Arc and Sleepy, looking pretty nice actually for this team that, in other ways is, can be sort of underwhelming. Um, yeah, and if you saw on Twitter, Kate Mitchell um, coming out of the Blizzard Arena at the end of this match with a dislocated shoulder. She put on Twitter from fist pumping too hard.
oh wow.
Uh, so if that's the way, because obviously this was also her last match as
As
GM of
GM.
Washington. We mentioned that a couple weeks ago, but so if that's the way you're going to go out,
Yeah,
that's something to do. Reverse sweep in Boston. Uh,
dislocated shoulder.
yeah. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the moves were her, but if they were her, she put the team in a very good position going forward. If you ask me, I think they've got some. Specifically with Sleepy, I think Sleepy's the best player on this team, and I'm not biased because he's on our fantasy team. Um, I I
It
think
just means
Sleepy's.
he's going to get played a lot now.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic for us. But yeah, I think Sleepy's one of the best flex supports in the league too. So it sucked that he got replaced by Violet, but he's here now. He's here. I highly suggest going on Twitter and after the game. The Shock was setting up for their game right after Washington won, and Sleepy and Super embraced after Sleepy's win. And there's a nice photo of that on Twitter. I think NRG Brett Box tweeted that picture, but it's a very cute, touching moment for former teammates. Anything else to talk about Boston Uprising wise? I guess.
I don't think so. I mean, let's see where they finished in the standings. 13th, 3-4. So
Yeah.
pretty much
Um,
sort of in the middle.
yeah, 3-4. Not the best. I think they should be doing better for the talent they have. Well, for the coaching they have. I think the coaching just needs to put together the talent a little bit better. All right, let's talk some top teams, specifically New York Excelsior, who both me and you in our picks, we thought this week New York Excelsior would stop Atlanta Reign. That last time these two played was a fluke. It wasn't a fluke, Joe. It was not a
Apparently
fluke.
not.
The Atlanta Reign have now beaten the New York Excelsior twice. I don't know if that means the Atlanta Reign are good or the New York Excelsior are bad, or I'm confused with the life, Joe. Teach me the ways of the Overwatch League. What is happening?
Yeah, it's weird. This was I mentioned a few minutes ago. This was the other thing that I planned to say. This is like above my pay grade to try to analyze. I don't know. Um, it's super weird. Every analyst, not just us, was saying, "Oh, there's no way the Lightning can strike twice." Um, you're right. It's just a fluke. Whatever. Atlanta is going to get crushed. They're going to take both teams are going to take this week off and figure each other out, and then New York is just going to win off of pure skill. But yeah, I don't really know much to say, and I actually wasn't able to watch this live, and I was really disappointed. And so partly for that reason is why this one is my match to go rewatch, because I'm also going to go rewatch it. Um, but yeah, back and forth the whole way through. I know they played Daco a lot in this series for Atlanta, which had to be helpful. I mean, this stage, he's been in and out of the lineup and having some pretty good successes when he's in it. Um, yeah, it's I don't know what to say. It's crazy. It's not super confidence inducing for New York players really, or New York fans
Yeah.
going into these playoffs.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't be confident, especially since you're not going into the playoffs when that's the playoffs are where you seem to fail the most. And this stage looked so easy for New York if you looked at the teams they were playing. At least as far as their standards go. Of course, they played Philly twice, right? Am I wrong?
Atlanta,
Or they played Atlanta twice. Um,
New York played Atlanta twice. Yeah.
um, but they played Philly once. They played Shanghai. They played Washington, Florida, Atlanta twice. So they had their schedule wasn't that hard this stage, and this was the stage that they grabbed two losses. And overall, their schedule hasn't been too tough so far, I would say. I think they've had a match against Seoul. They've had a match against the Shock. I don't think Shock was full form where they are right now when they faced them. They 4-0'd them. Um, And I don't think Seoul has also, both of those, I think the common thread between both of their hardest matches so far is both of those teams are significantly better than when they played them in stage one now. They have vastly improved since then, although Seoul has been up and down. Obviously, the Shock have vastly improved. So I think New York's not had the hardest of schedules. So them being 12-2, I think they should be 14-0. I don't know why they lost these games, but they did. It's like one of those anomaly games where you look back at them, and I think New York's gonna get right back up from this and maybe not lose again. Like as far as not stage playoffs, as far as regular season matches go, I could easily see them just forgetting about this, putting in the past, and then just winning like a bunch of games. But so it could be just an anomaly. As an analyst, you look at it and you're just like, yeah, for these two games, the Atlanta Reign looked good and the New York Excelsior looked bad, and that just happened.
Yeah, it's you gotta hope again as a New York fan that is how that is how it happens, that they're able to bounce back from that quickly.
Oh, you really gotta hope. I mean, and it should happen. This team's really good, obviously, so it should happen. But that's what I said. That's what I said this week, and that's what you said this week. we said easy 4-0. They're gonna bounce back. So, and then it didn't happen. And then it did not happen. Just a couple more matches here to go over to finish off our recap. There wasn't like too many exciting matches. I just want to Valiant versus Hunters. We don't have to talk about for too long, but I just do want to mention Valiant did upset the Hunters, and I've been talking about on this show how Valiant has talent and they're gonna rise up to the occasion, and now they're doing it, Joe. So. Yeah, they're out here.
And if Chengdu had won, they would be in the stage playoffs, but they're
Shanghai
not because they didn't.
Yep, exactly right. They gave Shanghai some stage playoff time. This is Shanghai's first stage playoffs, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. They gave Shanghai their first, so I think people aren't celebrating as much for Shanghai because they lost a game, but they still made it. But yeah, Chengdu Hunters team's just super inconsistent still. Probably, I don't know. But obviously they beat London last week, and now they're out here losing to Los Angeles Valiant, who I think are better than their record states according to their talent on their team, and their rosters coming together nicely now.
It's true.
But still losing LA Valiant's not what you want to do right now. Yeah, especially if you want to make stage playoffs. What else? We'll talk about Toronto Paris briefly, even though this was a stop, just because this was the one match we chose differently in our picks. I chose Paris.
And I would have chosen Paris, but sort of to play the game, I decided to pick against you. Sure, I'm glad I did, whatever. But yeah, this was definitely an off again series for Paris.
Mm-hmm.
They've been again super back and forth, all the way down at 16th in the stage.
Not good.
But yeah, it wasn't pretty for Paris, which again is a shame. We say this every time. They were supposed to be good. They still probably can be good. But
according to them, they were supposed to be good.
Yeah. But they weren't in this series.
Yeah, certainly weren't. Toronto impresses me at times, though. Ivy specifically impresses me at times. I don't think they're top. I don't think they... I think Toronto sneaks in via the wild card playoff at most. I think they're mid-table, but they've got impressive moments. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to update us on, because this is the last, we're done with picks for this stage. We'll pick the playoff bracket, but it doesn't count towards our standings.
Yeah.
So do you have exactly where we are? I went down one on you this week because we had all the same picks except that one, and I lost it.
Yeah, you're so there've been 40 10 weeks, so there've been 40 matches that we predicted so far. And you're at 23 and I'm at 21.
Okay. We're both above 50% now. That's good.
which is good. I would be concerned if we weren't.
Yes. We shouldn't have this podcast anymore. Someone takes it from us. But yeah, hopefully I keep my lead up. We'll see how we do in this playoff bracket. We don't count those towards that at all, but still fun to pick the bracket. We'll finish it off, obviously, with Seoul versus Hangzhou. We knew this match was going to matter going into the week, and I think we picked this match. We both picked Seoul. God, I did awful. Did I go 0-4 this week, or
you got one. We both got the Guangzhou Houston match.
Okay, good. Oh my God, if I went 0-4 again, jeez. But yeah, Hangzhou. I watched this match. Hangzhou looked good. I thought Seoul was gonna win this game. Joe, we both thought Seoul was gonna win this game. They couldn't pull through, but is Hangzhou the real deal now, Joe? This was a super hype team. They were known as the Scrim team, the Scrim Gods team of the off season, and they performed so throughout the season. But now they're here. They're in a stage playoffs. They made it as a 7 seed. I think they went. What'd they go? 5-2 this stage. Like that's pretty good. 5-2.
It's true.
And they're 8-6 overall. They're in the 8th spot in the overall standings now, which is also pretty good. So has Hangzhou hit their stride now, Joe?
They're 5-2. Their 2 losses to San Francisco and Vancouver.
So that's good.
Yeah, beating teams like Boston, Chengdu, Paris, and now Seoul on their way to it. I mean, that's a pretty respectable record for stage 2. I think their 7th place here finish at the end makes the stage 2 bracket I think much more sort of accurate than the stage 1 one was. I know we talked about that a little bit, that we didn't feel like Toronto in particular maybe was actually a top 8 team in stage 1. And I think, like we said, the final determining the final teams that made the playoffs came all the way down to this last match, Hangzhou versus Seoul. And I feel like while Seoul maybe deserved that spot a little bit more than Hangzhou, I think they're definitely right up there. Hangzhou, Shanghai, Chengdu, Seoul, 7, 8, 9, 10, like those are really relatively close positions, I think. But yeah, so as far as how is Hangzhou doing this stage, I think they did really well. I think that's it makes sense for them to make the playoffs. And so my MVP this week also is from this match against Seoul, from what we saw from Gushue, being able to come in and hold his own against Marvel on the main tank, who has effectively replaced Fissure, so he's got to be good. And sure enough, Gushue is too. So it's important, definitely for the Spark going into these stage playoffs.
We're the MVP for sure. The Spark. I think Seoul's a little bit better than the Spark. I think this is. I thought Seoul would win this. But yeah, and Spark still has like a -5 map differential overall too. They've been playing very close matches all around, so they don't even have a positive map win record yet. But they're still up there towards the top of the standings. But yeah, I was gonna say, about the stage playoffs. I think we got to count our blessings on the stage playoffs, honestly. I don't know if this is going to happen again, but I think almost everyone in it is pretty well deserving, minus Seoul. I think Seoul probably deserves it more than Shanghai, at least. Hangzhou did earn it over Seoul. But besides that, I think we got like a stage that's pretty amazing, because the top teams and the Shock, the Titans, Spitfire Gladiators, Excelsior, like they all had pretty easy schedules this stage, which allowed them all to make the stage playoffs. None of them, out of those 5 teams, did any of them even face each other?
That's a good question. I know lots of these like top table teams played several low teams this
I don't
stage.
I don't think so because London lost to Chengdu, Gladiators lost to Boston, and Excelsior. Their losses were to Atlanta. So I think all five of those teams did not play each other at all out of the top five teams. So it'll be awesome to see them face off against each other in the stage playoffs. So I think we got to count our blessings on this one. I don't think we'll get too many stages like this, honestly, where we actually have um, eight of the top teams facing off against each other. I think Shanghai is a little out of place here, maybe a bit. I think Dallas is like overall, if they had a harder schedule, would be a bit lower, maybe not even making playoffs. But I do think Seoul's the only one missing, honestly. So, and maybe Chengdu a bit. But I think this is looking good. Count our blessings,
Yeah.
everybody.
And who's your MVP this week?
Oh yes, my MVP. Well, I got to give to someone on the shock, and I'm going to get to Sinatra. He's still looking really good in a bunch of stats. He's still number one overall on hero damage. I believe he's like 3 in final blows, 7th in eliminations, or no, 3 in eliminations, 7th in final blows. So Sinatra, he's just doing fantastic. One of the best players in the league right now on Zarya. I had to give it to somebody on the shock, and I probably could have given it to anyone because every single player is performing out of their mind right now. But I felt like I had to give it to someone on the shock after a perfect stage. And I'll give it to Sinatra because I think he's definitely the best Zarya in the league right now. I'll say it.
There you go.
I'll come out and I'll say it. But yeah, you guys know, I guess, the top 8 teams in this stage: Shock, Titans, Spitfire, Gladiators, Excelsior, Fuel, Spark, Dragons, in that order. Those are the teams that are going to be in the stage playoffs, which we will be predicting after a small news segment right here. But overall, in the league standings, you have the Titans, Excelsior in first and second, leading their divisions, and then you have the Shock, Spitfire, Gladiators, Dallas Fuel, all making the top 6, that postseason cutoff. And Spitfire, Gladiators, Fuel are all at 9 and 5. Which is pretty close to the next in 7th, which is Fusion 8 and 6, and Hangzhou Spark at 8. You have then the Seoul Dynasty, Atlanta Reign, Toronto Defiant, Boston Uprising, all at 7 and 7 in that sort of wild card playoff spot. And then you also have Dragons right on the outside at 7 and 7. And you got some close teams behind them. Chengdu at 6 and 8, Guangzhou and Paris both at 5 and 9. A little bit out of there, but not quite out just yet. And then you have the bottom of the league, the Valiant Outlaws at 3 and 11, Justice at 2 and 12, and Florida at 1 and 13. So as the season goes on, we've got some more distance now. It's looking harder for some of these teams to end up making playoffs, but luckily we have that wild card playoff, so that these teams still have a chance.
It's true, yeah. And notably, we have no winless teams and only one undefeated team. Who will remain that way in regular season, at least until stage 3. But
yes, exactly right. But let's move on to some news. And we have PTR patch notes, Joe, and it has to do with the workshop. You want to go over it?
Again, notably no balance changes on this PTR. PTR update came out on Friday the 3rd or Thursday, maybe, whatever day that was. But yeah, a few changes to the workshop. So if you are a workshop person, know that you can now code with the actions of set primary fire and secondary fire enabled. So that's kind of cool, I guess. You can also, they lowered minimum wait time from 0.25 seconds to 0.016 seconds, which, as far as I know, has something to do with it's like the rate at which the server processes things. And I get the impression that this lower number is really good, and that's something people have wanted to be able to do more complicated things with their coding. So that's a good thing. Basically, the rest of you can increase the number of entities, icons, and effects from 32 to 64, so you can do more fancy stuff. That's kind of cool. And basically the rest of it is some minor changes. You can look at those patch notes or just try them for yourself on the PTR. Again, if you're a nice builder type of person. But yeah, so a couple of quality of life changes, and again, notably no like balance changes as we're getting closer and closer to this deadline that you might expect something to happen if it's gonna make a significant change in like the pro meta for stage 3. Like I would think if we don't get a PTR patch with some kind of balance changes like tomorrow on this Tuesday the 7th, that I'll be concerned that we don't get anything at all.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe at the latest, like next week, but I don't know. Yeah, it's concerning, but I think something's gonna happen. Something's gotta happen. Like they can't. There's got to be some more balance changes, just straight up. I know they're slow to them, so I wouldn't be that surprised if this didn't happen. But they got to change something. They got to change something here. We need it badly. But let's move on. All-Stars, All-Star Weekend, or not weekend, All-Star Weekdays.
All-Star Weeknights.
Yeah, weeknights at 6 Pacific. Rip to the Eastern boys out there. Sorry guys, you're gonna have to be staying up late on a Wednesday if you want to watch this. But yeah, they officially announced the maps for the All-Star Arcade, or the game mode type things. They're doing map 1 is going to be the sibling rivalry, which I think got the most votes overall, which is 3 Genjis and 3 Hanzos per team on Hanamura, of course, their home. Then map 2 is going to be Healers Never Die, which is supports only, which me and Joe were surprised was what a lot of people want to see. Yeah, that's on Nepal. Then we have Terrible, Terrible Damage, which is damage only. This is what I thought would be more popular than Healers Never Die, because we haven't seen damage heroes in forever. That's on Hollywood. Keeping the Peace, which is McCree only, on Route 66 is map 4. And then if we have a tiebreaker, which hopefully the players will allow us to, because this is a show match, it'll be Thanks But No Tanks, which is just no tanks, because people are sick of tanks on Blizzard World. So that'll be a fun little All-Star Arcadey thing, and that's on Wednesday. Of course, Wednesday's all the fun things. It starts off actually with the Talent Takedown, though, at 6 Pacific. That is sponsored by T-Mobile, of course, which is was everyone's favorite thing last year. We haven't gotten too much trash talk yet, or the announcement of the teams, but Talent Takedown's happening. Then Widowmaker 1v1s are happening, just the quarterfinals and semifinals. Then the All-Star Arcade, then the finals of the Widowmaker 1v1 is scheduled for 10:30 p.m. Pacific, which is 1:30 a.m. Eastern, right?
Yeah.
So very late on a Wednesday.
It's true.
For people who want to see the Widow 1v1s. And then Thursday, of course, is the official All-Star game, and we have the roster here. We talked about it last week. I don't think people want to hear me complain about it again. So
once they announce the other 24 players that'll be playing,
it'll be
include
fun.
that too.
Yeah, and the deserving players will probably be in that 24.
For sure.
But everyone on Reddit's like, everyone's just trying to see some fun players, and I'm like, okay, that's fair, but just don't. Hopefully, just no one is like, Pine, he's the best. He's a 2019 All-Star. You know, like hopefully people don't define these people by this, because it was a fan vote and it was for fun. People just want to see these players, and they want to see some DPS action as well. So
absolutely.
Hopefully that'll be fun. That one is at 9 Eastern on Thursday. So that'll be nice. That's a week after this week.
Yeah.
All-Stars was fun last year, so hopefully it'll be fun again.
And the other thing is that the skins have become available tomorrow, with the update presumably tomorrow afternoon Eastern, so late morning Pacific. 200 tokens each like $20 total, I think we said.
Yeah. Yep. So those drop Tuesday. I don't think we've gotten any specifics about like who's going to be in the Widow 1v1 or anything like that, but I think we need the full rosters first, probably.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Some big news to finish off our news section. Season 2 finals to be held at Philly, according to Slasher. Philadelphia. So we're back to the East Coast, Joe. Right close to New York, actually. I think a lot of people were hoping they would go international this year, which makes sense, but would be tough visa-wise.
Yeah.
To
And they are also doing other international lands for contenders. So I wonder that might just be their effort to not do everything outside the U.S. I don't know. Save a little effort that way.
I'm excited. I think people are whelmed by this, but I'm excited to see the Philly fans in action in their hometown for the first time, because I think Philly sports fans are some of the best. I think I mentioned this on the podcast, but Philly sports fans are some of the best fans in America, so I'm excited to see them. I don't think their team is going to be in it, unfortunately, but hopefully they get rowdy for some other teams.
Yeah, at this rate, at least, it's not looking super great, which is unfortunate. But what can you do?
I mean, the meta could totally shift and something could happen. But right now, it's looking like we have like two. I know people are calling it the big three: New York, Titans, and Shock. I've been seeing that all over the place, and I'm like, how could you include Excelsior in the big three when they're losing to Atlanta? And they lost in playoffs to Seoul last state. Like, I understand they're really good, but I don't think they're on the level of Titans and Shock right now. I really don't. So I think Titans and Shock are the big two, and then New York's in the next three or whatever. But yeah, right now it's looking like it's gonna be Shock Titans, as long as the stars align. But the meta could change, and honestly, if the meta changes out of goats, I think the Titans become a worse team, because I think in situations where they have tried to not play goats, they've looked a little worse than when they are playing goats. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it's looking like Shock Titans going down in Philly. Any other cities that you really wanted besides Philly? Where did you think, like, Joe, where did you think they would have held it? Like, what was the city you thought had the best chance going into this season?
I mean, I guess if they were going to try to include it maybe at a team that is likely to be in the playoffs, but also not crazy far away, and also not LA or New York. I don't know if they could do it in like Vancouver or something.
Yeah, Vancouver would be cool.
It would still be out of the country, but
Vancouver's still a big city, and that would be cool.
It's true, yeah. And again, they're likely to be in the playoffs, and all that. That'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah. What first came to my mind was San Francisco, even though everything's on the West Coast already, so that was kind of iffy. The next one was like London for me, but that's of course out of the country. But yeah, the next one was London for me, because I think that was pretty big. I think European fans are where Blizzard has been not as faithful to European fans so far with this league. So I thought, hey, maybe they'll send a peace offering by saying, hey, we'll hold the finals in your city.
It's true.
But yeah, it's super tough to get that visas stuff figured out, especially when you don't know who you need to get the visas for until like a week before the match happens, because you don't know who is actually going to be in the finals until two teams make the finals.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, so I imagine that would be tough on a very quick schedule to try to get visas for them. So yeah, that would be. Hopefully one day we have a nice European. Obviously, they're going to figure out all the visa stuff next year when everyone has to travel to these different countries.
You would hope so.
You would definitely hope so, because that would be illegal if they didn't do that. But let's move on to predicting our Stage 2 playoffs. And I think me and you, Joe, we have a very similar bracket here.
We do. It's like we were saying earlier that I think in general the Stage 2 playoffs are set up more or less more accurately than Stage 1 was in terms of like which teams are actually good this stage and how they might end up doing.
Yeah. And that's just because me and Joe have the same picks. I don't think it means that these games aren't going to be close, because I do think they're going to be close. I think last stage every game was like pretty much a blowout. Before the only really good game was the stage finals, besides like New York getting upset by Seoul. So I think this is going to be a very different one. I think almost every match has even shocked Dragons. I think Dragons could finally take a map off Shock this time around. So I think everything's going to be close. Let's start it off with Shock Dragons. Do you have the upset, Joe, or is it Shock? I feel like you have to pick Shock, right? You can't.
Yeah,
Be crazy.
especially this is just gonna be a rematch of the I guess second to last match of the stage. Shock has got to have the advantage here. Um, like you said, maybe Shanghai. They've seen him now. Um, they've had a little bit of experience, so maybe that helps them make it a little bit closer. But on the other hand, maybe Shock was sandbagging the whole time, and they have to flip the switch and just destroy Shanghai this next time. We'll have to see how that goes.
That'd be crazy if they're sandbagging this stage where they did not lose a map. But yeah, I'm definitely picking Shock as well. Sorry, Dragons. Your first stage playoffs will end swiftly. The next match is where's the schedule?
Um, it depends on how the next calendar match, I
Yeah,
believe,
next
is
calendar.
London,
Hangzhou,
Hangzhou.
London. Yeah, London, Hangzhou. So this is 2 seed versus 7 seed. Hangzhou just beat Seoul to make it here. Their only losses, as you mentioned earlier this stage, were to Shock and Titans, which are the two teams you expect to lose to. So can they beat London? This is London. London lost to Chengdu, which I would say Hangzhou is looking a little more consistent than Chengdu at this point. So is the upset possible here? Is it going to happen, Joe?
I mean, is it possible? Yeah, I think for this and the next, yeah, for this and the next match are probably the two most likely to flip against the seeds here. But I have picked London. They've been looking really strong this stage, even in contrast to stage one. Um, but yeah, to be able to pull this out over Hangzhou, if it was over Seoul, we sort of had a discussion about this last night during the Hangzhou Seoul match. I think it would be much closer and harder to pick. Because again, I think we agree Seoul's probably a little bit better than Hangzhou right now, but the way things stand, I think London's gonna be able to pull this out.
Yeah, I think specifically like in situations like this, stage playoffs, like Hangzhou hasn't been here in stage playoffs yet. It seems like when they're facing big teams and big moments is when Hangzhou is not looking the best, except of course that victory against Seoul. Um, but yeah, so I have a little more trust that Seoul can beat London. I haven't seen Hangzhou beat London yet, so I don't have as much trust. So I am going London, but I do think this will be closer than we think. I think this will be 5 maps. I think it will. I think it's going to be a close one, but I'm picking London in the end. Gladiators Excelsior, which is by far the best match of this first round here. These two teams are really good. Gladiators had a really good stage coming off of a loss. I think both these teams are pretty similar. Both of them coming off of losses in New York that they probably shouldn't have lost. But New York, both these teams are. I mean, New York, of course, their playoff struggles. I mean, can they get over the hump here? And now they got they got the fifth seed and have to face a very tough team in the first round too. So it's going to be even harder to get over this curse that they have, Joe. But can they do it despite all that?
Yeah, I mean they're on a loss streak now against Atlanta. Um, they're had sort of a crushing results in the Stage 1 playoffs. I'm not convinced. I said this last week after their first loss to Atlanta. I'm not convinced in the merits of this team going into playoffs, which is a shame because we know how good they are and all this. I had them set to win Stage 1, but after their performance in the Stage 1 playoffs, you just can't. Or at least I just can't bet with them this time. And so again, going with the seed here to pick Gladiators over New York. But again, this one and the London match is definitely going to be the two closest quarterfinals out of the four.
I think the Gladiators are straight up better than New York. They are better than New York. So I'm picking LA Gladiators for that reason. Throw all the curses out the window, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. I think LA Gladiators have a better team than New York at this point. Especially after I just saw New York drop 2 games to Atlanta Reign, and I think they haven't had the hardest schedule this season so far. And at times, I think New York doesn't care. And I don't like, especially like last season. I still haven't gotten over last season when New York, they looked really good, and then all of a sudden they just didn't care. It seemed like I have a bad taste in my mouth from that. I don't like that they didn't care. So I'm picking LA. I think LA's got a better team. I don't think New York's part of the big three. I think they're a couple teams better than them, at least more than a couple actually, because that would make them in the big three. But yeah, I think LA's better than New York, so I'm picking LA. Same bracket so far, and I think we'll still have the same bracket after the last one, which is Titans versus Fuel. Fuel, a relatively easy stage. Specifically, their 5 wins weren't too tough of opponents. And then you got Vancouver, another perfect stage, the only undefeated team left. They got a 3 seed somehow, of course, because of Overwatch League's weird rule where the winner of the Atlantic automatically earns the 2nd seed, which is a weird rule. But yeah, Vancouver 3 seed facing Dallas. Dallas got a pretty awful draw here. But yeah, is this an easy 3-0 for Vancouver? Because I think it is. I'm just gonna pick Vancouver right now.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be. I mean, if it was Dallas Shanghai or Dallas Hangzhou, which it wouldn't be because they're on the same sort of end of the bracket, but that'd be a different story. But yeah, I think Vancouver's pretty comfortably got this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that means we have the same round 2 matchups. So let's start off with London versus the Titans. Once again, it's just so hard. London's a great team. I think we both agree London's a great team.
Especially this stage, yeah. But
it's so hard.
You're right. It's just hard to bet against Vancouver. It's crazy.
So I think we're both going Vancouver. How close? So this is best of 7, right? Starting in the second round.
Yeah.
How close? How many games? How many how many maps?
Yeah. So how close? I don't know if I want to go numbers, but I think it'll be less close than Shock Gladiators.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 5
for
maps.
What that's worth.
London takes 1 map. That's it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, Vancouver. I feel like Vancouver just always lets up 1 map for some reason, at least. That's why their map record's a bit worse than Shock, because Shock doesn't let up that 1 map. But yeah, on the other side, you have Shock Gladiators. I agree. I think this is going to be the closer one of the semifinal matches, and I'm excited. LA Gladiators won their first matchup when they faced each other in 5 maps. Yeah, in 5 maps. And it was a very close one. And back then, San Francisco wasn't as good as they are now. In fact, they were a completely different team back then, I feel like. So does this have to be a dominant one, Joe? Are the Gladiators pulling off this upset?
I think it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not the pick that I'm making, but it's definitely possible. Um, yeah, if not Vancouver coming in from the other side of the bracket to beat Chuck, I think Gladiators are probably the best chance.
I agree. This, yes. I'm going 7 maps on this one. It's going to be a really good one. But San Francisco's going to win in the end, and go. I mean, they can't not win. San Francisco can't not win. But so we have the same finals as stage one. San Francisco versus the Titans, a rematch for the ages. We get to see it again, Joe, which will be, I think, the third time we've seen this matchup, because we did see it once in stage one, and then we saw the playoffs, and now, if this happens, we'll see it again. Are things different this time around? We went to 7 maps. It was so insanely close. San Francisco's had a better stage than Vancouver, because of course they've had that perfect map record. Is this an old reverse here, an old flipperoo?
It's gonna have to be super insanely close again. I mean, just from what we know about these teams, they seem to be excited about that. Um, but yeah, I think this stage I am changing. Like I said, I had picked New York and Vancouver, and then New York to win for stage one, um, and then Vancouver came away with the title. But yeah, for the rematch, San Francisco versus Vancouver, I'm going to give stage two to San Francisco this time. Actually, again, this is a team that hasn't dropped a map all stage, and they've got the experience now to last. To last 7 maps or 8 maps or 9 maps or however many they draw, because it might be possible this time. It's hard to say. Um, but yeah, they have the experience now. They have definitely the skill. They've shown that. Um, yeah, like I said, um, if Vancouver isn't enough to take them, and I think it's a real possibility for San Francisco to come away with stage two.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I gotta contest you here, Joe, and say Vancouver. I think this is such a coin flip matchup. I think these two are so good at goats, both of them. Like, it's just back and forth. We saw it last matchup. But this is going to be crazy close again, and I think Vancouver pulls it out again. They're just so good in the clutch. Even before Vancouver, when they were runaway, they're so good when a series is going to like 7, 8 maps. Like, that's when they just clutch up and they pull it out almost every time. And that's why it's so much fun to watch these guys, because whenever they're facing really good teams, it always seems to go to 7, 8, like 9 maps in these big finals games, and they somehow manage to pull it out, and it's fantastic to watch. Um, Before, though, they did struggle to pull those out. It still was going to 7 maps, but they were not pulling it out. In fact, they were getting like reverse swept and stuff like that. That was way back when Runaway was like first this ragtag team, who was like coming up and upsetting people, and now they're just this giant super team, who's fantastic, and that's because they got over that hump. But I do think they're just so good in the clutch now. I'm going Vancouver. Um, but Joe, I think my favorite part about this bracket is we don't know what's going to happen. We haven't seen San Francisco up against like teams like the Gladiators or Titans this stage yet. They've had a perfect map record, but we haven't seen them face really, really tough teams yet. So I'm excited. We haven't seen like Excelsior or Gladiators up against really good teams either. We haven't seen Titans up against really good teams. So I'm excited. I'm excited that we get to see all these top teams finally face off. It's going to be a great weekend. Everyone watch.
Absolutely.
Anything else to say, Joe, before we sign off?
I don't think so. I mean, we've got stage playoffs this week, All Stars the next, and then
A long break.
Contenders is actually the week
Oh
after.
yeah,
So we'll probably cover that
Contenders.
maybe.
Yeah, I'll cover that. We can cover that. I mean, it's going to be an event. It's like the first cross contenders LAN event. I'm excited for that. That's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll definitely cover that. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I'm so excited for this weekend. It's going down. It's straight up going down. I'm excited. So yeah, that's it for episode number 37 of On the Flank. If you guys want to follow us on our social medias, my personal Twitter accounts at JWGeorgeIV, Joe's is at Kirkpatrick_Inc. That's INC. Our show has a Twitter account at On the Flank Show, and actually, if you go follow our Twitter account right now, you can see a beautiful graphic Joe made of our brackets and our predictions. It's very nice, fancy, and you can also see our MVPs. Of course, we tweet out when episodes go live. You're listening to this in one way. If you want to listen to it another way, you can go to ontheflank.podbean.com. You can go to my personal YouTube channel, John George, which is you're most likely going to be finding that via my Twitter account. We're on iTunes, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and we are on Google Play. Thank you guys for listening, and please watch the Overwatch League this weekend. It's going to be an historic stage playoffs. I guarantee it.